And we made it. That was way more work than I thought it was going to be. The results for the great ASL counter jamboree are in. But before we jump to the results of this video, which will probably be my last counter clipping video you ever see, no promises, I'm going to go over the poll I put up on the channel community section. And I asked you, the players, who has the best ASL counters besides standard MMP counters, just to gauge the community before I showed you my subjective results from this little study I did. And here are your results. There were only 58 votes when I took this screenshot because it had only been up a matter of hours. And Bounding Fire Productions came in first, garnering full 50% of the votes. Advancing Fire came in second. LFT came in third. Critical Hit came in ninth. Fourth with 9%. Broken Ground Design came in fifth with 5%. And Lone Canuck Publishing, I said leave a comment. Nobody left a comment to vote for them. They have very limited number of counters available to them, but I included them in this little study here. Okay, now let's go to the results of my study and see how they jibe with the community vote here. And here are the final results. And you know, sometimes I wonder why I do this to myself, because according to my calculations and my subjective rating and ranking system, Bounding Fire Productions came in number one, exactly how you guys voted. Advancing Fire came in second, exactly how you guys voted. After that, it's a little more jumbled compared to your votes, but I'll go through the table here. So up on the top, we have the third-party publishers, including what module I took the counter sheet from. It was pretty much random from what I had available where I took the counter sheets, and then the 9 or 10 different criteria that I ranked them against. And you can see Advancing Fire and Bounding Fire Productions clearly have the best color and aesthetics. Oh, one other thing. I was going to rank Multi-Man Publishing, but I thought, why bother? They're sort of the standard counter. They are what they are. We all have them. So I wasn't going to rank them, but I was going to compare, at least from the dimensional measurements, to the values that they measured up to. Advancing Fire, Bounding Fire Productions, best color and aesthetics. Critical Hit came in last, in my opinion. And the other ones were kind of in the middle. LFT came in second. They got 5 points. Resolution, Advancing Fire, Bounding Fire Productions came in first. Broken Ground Design and LCP came in last with 3 points. That's mainly, I think it's due to the resolution of the, I think, halftone printing process that were used by the different third-party publishers. Readability was kind of all over the place. Advancing Fire, I put them first. Bounding Fire was very close second. Critical Hit was last, mainly because of the size and the resolution. Broken Ground Design has, their resolution isn't great, but the size of the text is much bigger, thus it's easier to read. Die cutting, Advancing Fire first, Bounding Fire Productions very close second. Critical Hit dead far last. The centering, there were color overlaps, there were centering issues, there were all kinds of issues with Critical Hit with the alignment and the sheet release. Well, I'll go over here in a second. Bounding Fire Productions came in second. Lone Canuck Publishing actually made a very, even though they offer limited number of counters, they made a very nice showing, at least the module I pulled it from. They had a nice sheet release. LFT had some problems, mainly because if you don't want to punch an entire sheet, if you just want to punch out a few units to use in some scenario you're going to play, there's no sprue system along each row. They're only on the ends. So if you want to punch out the entire row or 2 rows will fall out when you do that. You can't just selectively punch out some counters. May not be a big deal to some people, but that's one of the criteria I weighed against. Smoothness, kind of the surface finish that you can see in the videos prior to this section. Advancing Fire was first. Critical Hit was also first. At least the sheets that I had, the olive drab American units, they were really smooth, very nice. So That's the only criteria critical hit came in with a high score on, was the smoothness of the laminating process on the, especially on the front. It was smooth as glass. Advancing Fire was really also very smooth. Bounding Fire Productions was not bad. I think LFT, or maybe it was Bounding Fire Productions. Instead of waviness, it had some, I don't know. It was just kind of rough. It was kind of had a texture to it instead of being smooth. Sheet release, Bounding Fire Productions won. Lone Canuck also tied. Very easy to just punch out one or two in a given row. Critical hit, you basically had to cut the counters out. The sprues that hold the counters into the sheet itself are so thick that if you try to tear them out, you're going to delaminate or tear. You basically have to cut every row out if you want your counters to look decent. And then because the sprues are so big, the trimming of them causes a problem because they're so big when you trim it, there's still a little bit of a nub left on some of the corners. That's why they got a 2 in trimming. Advancing Fire and Bounty Fire Production got 6s on trimming. Their counters trim up really, really nice. Same with Broken Ground Design, and Lone Canuck Publishing also trimmed up nice. Now the bottom 3 rows here are the dimensions, and you can see over on the left column MMP. That's sort of the criteria I weighed against, because you want your counters, third-party counters, to match as closely to Multiman Publishing dimensions as possible. And I measured 10 of each size counter and 10 thicknesses. Now, some people might argue, and it's a valid argument, that that's not a statistically significant number. It starts becoming statistically significant at about 30 samples, but I was not going to measure, I don't know, 500 counters, whatever that would have ended up being. I measured 10 of each and called it good. And you can see for thickness, they were all pretty good, except for Advancing Fire. They ran on the thin side for some reason. These dimensions may not be of any importance to anybody. You could drop these rows out and recalculate the numbers and see where it falls out. I think Advancing Fire might jump ahead of Bounding Fire if you did that, because dimensions may not be important to people. Half-inch size, the half-inch counters. Bounding Fire. Oh, look at Bounding Fire. They got 6s for all the dimensions. Their dimensions were one. They were really close to MMP dimensions, and they were dead nuts on between different sizes within their own sheet. Very little statistical variation. A thousandth of an inch across 10 samples of each counter size and thickness. Very little variation. I don't know who they use to do their die cutting, but they do a great job. Now, on the other end of it, if you look over at LFT, this was from the Green Hell of Ainur sheet, and their half-inch size and their 5/8 inch size were all over the place. The half-inch size, the standard deviation was 5 to 8 times higher than the other third-party publishers. The dimensions, and it was low compared to the Multiman Publishing, at least the nominal 4.96 versus 0.482. I don't know why, but their width of their half-inch counters were all over the place. Huge variation. Consistency problem with stacking. If you're trying to stack with other counters and picking them up, like I've mentioned before, you might miss some picking them up. May not be a big deal, but it was one of the criteria. 5/8 inch counters, their variation was pretty much in line with everybody else, but they were on the large size. They were the largest size compared to everybody else. So the final rankings from this is Bounding Fire Productions squeaks it out over Advancing Fire by 4 points. Like I said, I believe if you drop the last 3 rows for dimensions, you would flip those, and I believe Advancing Fire would come out just ahead. You can't go wrong with either of these. They make great counters in the modules they publish. It's a shame they don't sell counters just on their own. The only major difference, I believe, between Advancing Fire and Bounding Fire is one, Advancing Fire kind of has a shadowy effect on their silhouettes, their color silhouettes, which gives them a little more three-dimensional look. And the other difference is Bounding Fire Productions, their consistency with the dimensions are great. Dead nuts on, at least from the module I pulled this from. See who came in third. Lone Canuck Publishing came in third, which is kind of a surprise, but I put an asterisk next to their score because they don't really have any sheets of counters. This was an infantry only sheet from Konigsberg, the Bear's Revenge. There are really no 5/8. I found 10 5/8 inch counters from the module. The Race for the Muse, I think it was called, that I measured, but in general, all you can get from them is half-inch counters. So the asterisk is kind of a caveat to that. But they came in, at least numerically, they came in third. Broken Ground Design came in fourth, actually, just ahead of LFT. LFT came in fifth. Critical Hit came in dead last. And the reason Critical Hit came in dead last is a lot of their counter sheets are offset. The printing is offset from the die cutting. The sprue system is just unwieldy and is ugly and hard to work with. LFT kind of had the same problem. They had some dimensional problems. They had some offset problems, which I'll show you here in a minute. And we'll go through some quick pictures real quick. You're ranking, you could rank these any way you want. If you think, sheet release is more important than something else, or readability is more important, you could re-rank these yourself. Like the dimensions, most people probably won't care about that. You could strip those off. In fact, let's see. I think I did that. Yeah, I stripped off the dimensional and re-ran the numbers. And because Bounding Fire isn't dominating the consistency and the dimensions of the counters, Advancing Fire just squeaks ahead of them, mainly based on readability. I think they're a little bit easier to read. The centering is a little bit better, and the surface smoothness is better. That kind of puts them ahead of Bounding Fire Productions. They're neck and neck between those two. It could go either way. But after that, just like the poll suggests, after those two, it falls off, and it's kind of a mixed bag depending on the third-party publisher and possibly which module you pull the counter sheet from to do a comparison like this. Okay, let's go through some pictures real quick. I always say real quick, but it always takes long. So here's multi-man publishing, like I've mentioned before, the gold standard. They're basic, but they're iconic. You could lay out a row of counters from 10, 20 different war games in front of a wargamer and ask them to pick out which game each counter is from. And I can almost guarantee you, unless they are hardcore, the one that they'll get right every time, whether they play ASL or not, is ASL or squad leader. They'll point to it and go, "Oh, that's squad leader," or "That's ASL." Some of the other ones they might point to and they're not sure of, but the counters are so iconic and so ingrained in wargaming that you can't go wrong with multi-man publishing. Even though they use, black silhouettes, very simplistic, they still look great. Quality is consistent. They punch nice. They trim nice. They're great. What more can you say? Advancing Fire, they're kind of the new kids on the block. Their counters from Brevity Assault and Biaza Ridge, ooh, they were pretty iffy, if you ask me. But man, they turned it around with Prokhorovka, which these are from, and Orsonia, which came out just a few months ago, I think. They trim nice, punch nice out of the sheet nice. They look great. They're easy to read. They're centered well. Yeah, their counters are great. Good art, got a little depth to them with the shadows. Yeah, really like these counters. Bounding Fire Production, kind of the same thing. They don't have the shadow effect, on their vehicles, but they're crisp and clear. Here's the kind of what dinged them, at least in this rating. Some of their units were off center more than more than Advancing Fire. That kind of bit them a little bit, but they have great counters either way. Next up is Broken Ground Design. Now, I think their art is a little bit of an acquired taste. The printing isn't as clear as some of the other manufacturers, but it's enlarged, so it's easier to read. A little bit of centering issues on there, but they trim up nicely. And the art style, like I said, maybe a little bit of an acquired taste, but they're generally a pretty good counter. Critical Hit. Oh, yeah. These just They look old, they look dated. I mean, we have off-centered here. We've got color bleeding onto another counter. You can see here the sprue when I rounded the corner. It's still there. Color from bleeding over. Smallish font is more color bleeding over. Nearly clipping off. Counter information, bad offset. If you're gonna buy counters, and a lot of these things sprung up because Multiman Publishing didn't have modules in print. They're pretty good about that now. So people would go to third-party printers, and Critical Hit was one of them. My recommendation: don't waste your money on Critical Hit anymore. Most of the modules are in print, or get Broken Ground Design. They're probably cheaper. They come out of the sheet easier. They trim better. They're easier to read. The only thing you might have to deal with is, the artwork on them maybe a little bit different, a little bit out of your taste. But don't bother with Critical Hit. In my opinion, their counters are junk. I have some, and now that I've punched them and cut them and trimmed them, I kind of regret it. But there's no going back now. It is what it is. This is Lone Canuck. This was a surprise. These are the vehicles I found. The counters look great. They're easy to read, trim up great, punched out great. He doesn't sell counters though, so you just have to get what you get whenever you order a tactical mission pack from George at Lone Canuck Publishing. But yeah, they're pretty basic. I mean, the art's pretty basic. They look pretty basic, but yeah, they're great counters for what you get with the module. Can't complain. This is LFT, and yeah, this was the green hell, and you can see the problems here. Why they were rated. You have some color bleed on some counters. You've got offset issues, not even consistent offset issues. This guy is offset to the right. This guy is offset up, and if you trim them or even punch them out of the sheet, you're losing information, almost losing information on some of these. And then there seems to be a squaring issue with the die. Because when I put it in the trimmer, if the sides aren't orthogonal and you put it in and trim it, you can actually start to shear off the side on some of these, which I did. And you kind of get that Nike swoop clip when you put it through your trimmer. I saw that, which leads me to believe that the sides in their die are not orthogonal. They're not square. They're a little bit, I'm exaggerating, they're angled one way or another, and you're actually kind of shaving off the side here when you put him through your trimmer. On the sheet, they look great, but as soon as you start punching them and trimming them and looking at them closer, uh, the ones at least I did for this study had a lot of problems. That's why LFT rated so low. Now, if I took another product or I went through all their products and cherry picked the best sheet, maybe they'd have a higher score. But for this comparison, that's the score they got. That is what it is. Back to Multiman Publisher. Okay, real quick. I say real quick again. Let's look at some close-up images, some zoomed-in images. You can see the kind of the half-tone printing process that the counters use here. Here we have Multiman Publishing, and you notice the color is a half-tone to create that green look for this American AFV. But look at the text; it's solid black. There's no half-tone involved with the text, so it's got a crisp edge. Take note of that as we go to some of these other counters. This is Advancing Fire, same thing. Uh, the text has a nice crisp edge, looks great. Let's go to Bounding Fire. No shadow on the vehicle, but it's got a really crisp edge. All the text has a really crisp edge, which makes it easy to read. And then we start getting into Broken Ground Design. Now, I'm not an expert on printing technology and how things work, but if you compare the text on this, even though it is bigger, I don't know, it's using some sort of different process to put the text on the counter as opposed to, say, Broken Ground Design, which is crisp, easy to read, black, great edges. Here you're getting some fuzziness, which makes it a little bit harder to read, especially when you get to, the vehicle, and you're not zoomed in. You're trying to read the vehicle title name on a counter that's, this big, it's really, really hard to read. But the other, because the fonts are so big, it's hard to notice that fuzziness on these because he blew up the uh, the font on this stuff. But the some of these use this, I don't know, maybe it's half tone on the black instead of a solid black. I'm not sure. This should be the standard. And MMP uses, kind of looks like they use it. I think Advancing Fire and Bounding Fire are better at it, whoever they're using for printing, to get those crisp text that's easy to read. MMP is also easy to read, just not as crisp. Critical hit. It's like the CH logo. It's not solid. It's a half tone. If you look at Bounding Fire, it's a solid yellow, easy to read. Uh, yeah, all the text here is kind of fuzzy. It's small or cut off, almost nearly cut off in this case. So that's critical hit. This is Lone Canuck Publishing. Same thing. The text isn't crisp. Well, what is interesting is this A looks nice and crisp, but the strength numbers and the LCP look really fuzzy. But it is large. The numbers are larger than normal counters, so it's fairly easy to read. It'd be nice if these could be that nice solid crisp edge like the A there. That'd look great. The silhouette's kind of generic looking, not that exciting. Like I said, LCP counters are pretty plain, but they look and function well. This is the vehicle I got from that one module. It doesn't look that great. I really can't even tell what it is. I mean, it's a vehicle with an 88L, but it's fuzzy and weird looking. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Fuzzy text, a little hard to read. The turret line is very thin and small. But yeah, George hasn't done many vehicle counters, so I'll give him a bit of a pass. His infantry counters look pretty good. This is LFT. They have crisp text. You can see the offset issues here. You can see some delamination here where I rounded this corner in the lower left. And it looks like there's a rotation issue. The strength numbers look weird. It looks like they're slanted, or it's lot of the counters from this module just seem really wonky to me. I don't know if that's normal for LFT or if I just picked the wrong module to sample from. I don't know. In general, it looks like LFT has pretty good stuff, but the counters in Green Hell of Einor don't look very good. And this is another example of LFT, just to show the color bleed over and the problems with the dye being offset too much and getting color from another counter or part of the printing process down here below. Text looks pretty good, but you don't want to see this when you're punching counters out and trimming. Back to MMP. Okay, that is it. Let me go back up to the final rating. So Bounding Fire Productions is the winner, 56 points. Advancing Fire number 2. Swap them. They both make great counters. It's a shame that they don't sell counters on their own because I think they look great. I would support Broken Ground Design over Critical Hit any time of the day for quality and price. Lone Canuck Publishing gets an honorable mention for their infantry counters. They look great. LFT, I'm sorry, I don't. This is just how it came out in the ranking here. You came in nearly last, nearly with Critical Hit. Although I do believe your quality is significantly higher than Critical Hit. Maybe it was just my selection, like I said. But I do not ever imagine I would want to do this comparison again because it was way more work than I intended it to be, and probably way more of a nerdy analysis than you guys were expecting. Okay. Oh, did you find the contest and enter the contest to win a $50 gift certificate to Ritterkrieg because we hit 5,000 subscribers. So thank you and salute to all the subscribers out there and the members who have joined. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to making more videos for you guys in the year. and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, I am going to go rest my wrist and put my counters away. See you next time.